Okay, today we're going to learn about cells and their parts. All living things are made of cells, and living things or organisms are divided into two different types. You can have unicellular organisms, organisms that carry out all life processes within one cell. An example of a unicellular organism would be a paramecium, which you can see in the first picture, and an amoeba, which you can see in the second picture. Another example would be bacteria, which you can see in the picture further down the screen. Multicellular organisms are organisms that are made up of two or more cells. These cells are highly specialized to perform specific functions. For example, a heart cell does certain things, and stomach cells do certain things. They do not do the same thing. An example of a multicellular organism would be humans, any kind of plant such as any tree, seaweed, fish. I could go on and on. Cells themselves are divided into two main groups. You can have prokaryote cells. These are any cell without a nucleus. The word pro means before, so it literally means before the nucleus. So a prokaryote cell, any cell that lacks a nucleus and organelles that have membranes around them. All prokaryotes are unicellular. Examples would be archaebacteria and the eubacteria, and you can see that in this picture there. That would be an example of a eubacteria cell. They are one cell. The other cell type are eukaryote cells. This is any cell that has a nucleus and organelles with membranes around them. Eukaryotes can be single or multi-celled. Amoebas are eukaryotes because they have a nucleus. Parameciums are eukaryotes because they have a nucleus. Fish cells have a nucleus, so they're eukaryotes. Human cells have a nucleus, so they're eukaryotes. And seaweed, and you could go on and on. The prefix "eu" in this case means after, so after the nucleus. Any cell that has a nucleus. When studying cells, you need to know some important things about some scientists. We are going to study 5 scientists. There are many more we could actually study, but we're going to focus on these 5. Robert Hooke was an English scientist, and he was the first person to examine slices of cork underneath a microscope. When he did this, he saw hollow, tiny boxes similar to a honeycomb, and he named these boxes cells. So he was the first guy to actually give cells a name. This happened in 1665, and cork is dead plant cells. So he was looking at dead plants underneath the microscope. So that is one way that could help you remember what he did. His last name has a hook in it. Think of hooking a fish. You would kind of kill the fish. So looking at dead plants, he hooked them. Then we have Anton von Leeuwenhoek. He was actually a microscope maker. He made hundreds of microscopes in his life. He was actually the first person to describe a living cell in 1675. So a way you can remember what Leeuwenhoek did, L for Leeuwenhoek, L for living. Leeuwenhoek, living. Matthias Schleiden, he was a German botanist, and if you don't know botany, people look at plants. So it makes sense that in 1839 he observed and concluded all plants have cells. Think of a flower, Matthias Schleiden, think of flower. Theodor Schwann was a German zoologist, and in 1839 he observed and concluded all animals have cells, which kind of makes sense because zoology people are studying animals. So an easy way to remember that is Schwann, swan. Swan is an animal. The last scientist we're going to focus on is Theodor Virchow. He was a German physician. He studied how diseases affect living organisms, And he determined that cells can only come from other cells. Cells just do not miraculously appear out of nowhere. They had to come from a previous cell. All of these guys' work, plus a few other scientists' work, they were able to make what's called the cell theory. The cell theory is made up of 3 parts. This theory would not have come about without the invention of the microscope. The microscope has allowed scientists to look at tiny things under the microscope. Before the invention of the microscope, when people did surgery, they didn't wash their hands, they didn't wear gloves, they didn't even sterilize their utensils. They had no idea that there was microscopic organisms out there making people sick. The cell theory consists of all living things are composed of 1 or more cells. The cell is the basic organization of living things. In other words, it's the smallest unit of life. All cells come from pre-existing cells, a process in which cells reproduce to make an exact copy of themselves, which is known as mitosis. This is where we are going to stop today with the notes.